think you want to hear. Do you think I'm like, from what she got? I think she's heavy.
The video ain't really the issue. The video being posted up on social media is the issue. If someone would have sent her that video privately, she and I would have had one conversation about it, and it would have been.
It just put a lot of back and forth, a lot more strain on just what we had going on. Afraid of that, and it did put some strain on our relationship. If you see him, we was about to divorce here and break it up here.
What started as just another day in court quickly turned into one of the most shocking and emotional spectacles the Harris family had ever faced. Cameras were already flashing, reporters were lined up outside the courthouse, and whispers filled the air. People knew something big was about to happen, but no one could have imagined the storm that was about to unfold. The name Harris has always carried weight in the world of music and entertainment. T.I. is a rap legend, Tiny is a beloved figure in the industry, and Shekinah, once a close friend, has been part of their story for years. But what was once a circle of trust now seemed on the verge of total collapse. Tiny walked into the courtroom that morning with her head slightly bowed, trying to avoid the eyes of the reporters who shouted questions her way. She was dressed in black, almost as if she was attending a funeral, and in a sense, maybe she was. The funeral of trust, the death of loyalty. Her face told a story even before she spoke. Sleepless nights, endless tears, and the heavy weight of betrayal pressing down on her shoulders. Behind her, members of her family followed closely, their expressions tense. They knew that today wasn't going to be easy. T.I. walked in separately, his jaw tight, his eyes darting around the room like a man preparing for battle. He didn't acknowledge the cameras or the reporters. He just kept walking straight ahead, trying to keep his composure. But deep inside, even he knew this wasn't just another legal hearing. This was about his character, his family, and possibly the end of everything he and Tiny had built together. And then, there was Shekinah. Once considered Tiny's ride-or-die friend, she sat quietly in her seat, avoiding eye contact with everyone. She knew the eyes of the courtroom were on her. She knew the whispers were about her. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her phone, her face betraying nervousness even as she tried to look calm. The judge entered, calling the room to order, and almost immediately, the tone shifted from anticipation to full-blown chaos. Lawyers shuffled papers, the press leaned in, and then came the shocking announcement that would turn this into one of the most unforgettable court sessions in recent memory. A tape. A secret tape had been entered into evidence. The words alone sent a ripple through the courtroom. You could hear the gasps, the murmurs, the sudden shift in energy. A tape? Of what? Of who? And why did it seem to have everyone, especially Tiny, on edge? When the prosecutor confirmed that the tape allegedly contained private moments between T.I. and Shekinah, the air seemed to leave the room. For Tiny, it was like the floor had dropped out from beneath her. Her eyes widened, her lips trembled, and her hands gripped the edge of the table as though she needed something to hold onto before collapsing. The judge allowed the tape to be referenced in court, though its full contents weren't played publicly for everyone. But even the mention of it was enough. The details began to spill. Whispered conversations, secret meetings, words that crossed boundaries no loyal husband or friend should ever cross. The mere thought of betrayal being captured so clearly was enough to destroy Tiny in that very moment. Her body shook. Tears spilled uncontrollably down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away, but it was no use. She was breaking, and everyone could see it. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras clicked nonstop, and the entire courtroom sat frozen as they watched a woman's heart shatter in real time. T.I. sat stiffly, his jaw clenched so hard it looked like it could crack. He didn't speak. He didn't reach out. He just sat there, trying to mask his own storm of emotions. But his silence only fueled the fire. To Tiny, it felt like confirmation. To the public, it looked like guilt. Shekinah, on the other hand, avoided eye contact completely. She kept her head low, her hands trembling in her lap. It was obvious she wanted to disappear, but in that courtroom, there was nowhere to hide. The whispers around the room grew louder. Some people stared at her in disbelief, others with disgust. Once considered a friend, she now sat at the center of a scandal that threatened to tear apart a family. Tiny's sobs echoed through the courtroom. Her lawyers tried to comfort her, handing her tissues, whispering words of reassurance, but it was no use. She felt humiliated, betrayed, exposed. She had stood by T.I. through so many storms, defended him against critics, forgiven mistakes that others would have never tolerated. But this was a public betrayal, caught on tape, undeniable and humiliating. The judge tried to restore order, but the courtroom had already spiraled into chaos. Reporters ran out to call their editors, rushing to be the first to break the story. Within minutes, social media was ablaze. Hashtags like #Tiny Breaks Down, RTI Exposed, and a Shekinah scandal began trending. Fans and critics alike were glued to their screens, dissecting every detail, every image, every rumor. Outside the courthouse, news vans crowded the streets. Fans gathered, holding signs, shouting words of support for Tiny. Others demanded answers from T.I. Some even yelled at Shekinah as she left the courtroom, accusing her of betrayal. The world had just witnessed one of the most dramatic and personal moments of the Harris family play out like a movie scene, and now everyone had an opinion. Back inside, Tiny couldn't contain her pain. She sobbed uncontrollably, burying her face in her hands as family members tried to console her. One of her relatives whispered, "You don't deserve this." Not like this. But Tiny's mind was elsewhere. She was replaying years of memories. Every laugh, every tear, every sacrifice she had made to stand by her husband. And now all of it felt like a lie. T.I., for his part, finally spoke. His voice was low, controlled, but filled with tension. He denied that anything on the tape proved an affair. He claimed things were taken out of context, twisted to create a false narrative. But the damage was done. The courtroom wasn't convinced. The public wasn't convinced. And most importantly, Tiny wasn't convinced. The humiliation of hearing whispers about her marriage, about her friend, about betrayal so deep it was caught on tape. It was too much. She stood up, tears still streaming, and whispered words that silenced the entire courtroom. "I can't do this anymore." Those words hit like a bomb. The reporters outside caught wind of them instantly. Headlines changed, Tiny walks out after tape revelation. The narrative shifted again, and the story grew bigger with each passing hour. Meanwhile, social media was in a frenzy. Some fans defended Tiny, praising her strength and demanding she walk away from T.I. Others accused the tape of being manipulated, insisting that people were too quick to judge. And then there were those who turned their focus on Shekinah, tearing her apart online, labeling her as disloyal, untrustworthy, and the ultimate betrayer. As the story grew, celebrities chimed in. Some offered support to Tiny, urging her to prioritize her peace. Others remained silent, careful not to get dragged into the storm. But no matter how people reacted, one thing was clear. The Harris family was at the center of one of the biggest scandals of the year. Tiny, still heartbroken, avoided cameras after leaving the courthouse. She was reportedly surrounded by close family and friends trying to process the pain. T.I., on the other hand, was spotted leaving separately, stone-faced, his silence fueling even more speculation. And Shekinah? She disappeared from the public eye, avoiding the media storm entirely. But the damage had already been done. The tape had been exposed. Tiny had broken down in court, and the world now knew about cracks in a marriage that had once seemed unbreakable. The fallout didn't just make headlines, it shook the culture to its core. For days, every major news outlet dissected every frame of the leaked tape, every nuance of courtroom testimony, every cryptic social media post. It wasn't just gossip. It was a full-blown cultural event. Twitter was on fire. Instagram was flooded with theories, support threads, and savage memes. TikTok detectives were breaking down timelines like they were solving a murder case. And through all this chaos, one thing remained eerily consistent: Tiny's silence. She didn't tweet. She didn't go live. She didn't issue a statement. And that silence? It screamed louder than any words ever could. It wasn't just the absence of a comment. It was the echo of heartbreak, betrayal, and maybe clarity. The questions swirling around weren't simple. They weren't just about a tape. They were about years of loyalty. Years of standing by T.I.'s side through every scandal, accusation, and apology. But now? People are wondering, is this finally the moment Tiny walks away for good? Is this the straw that broke the camel's back? Or in this case, the crown on the Queen of the South's head? And then there's Shekinah. Loud, loyal, unpredictable Shekinah, caught in the crossfire of a scandal she never saw coming. The public is torn. Some say she was a pawn, others say she knew more than she let on. Either way, her reputation took a hit so hard it might never fully recover. She's not just fighting for friendship anymore, she's fighting for her entire public identity. Tiny's breakdown in court wasn't just a moment. It was a raw, real unraveling of a woman who's been holding it all together for far too long. Tears smudging her makeup, voice shaking, hands trembling, she finally let it all out. Not just about the tape, but about everything. The years of denial, the silence, the sacrifices. And in that moment, she wasn't just a celebrity wife. She was every woman who's ever had to smile through betrayal, who's ever been told to stay strong when breaking was the only honest thing to do. This scandal? It's bigger than gossip. It's about broken trust, exposed secrets, and the ugly reality behind closed doors. The Harris family name, once gold-plated and reality TV polished, now drips with controversy. And that bond between T.I., Tiny, and Shekinah? Maybe it wasn't as solid as it looked on screen. Maybe it was just a ticking time bomb waiting for the right spark to blow it all to pieces. What happens next is anyone's guess. But one thing's for sure. There's no going back. Not after this. Not when the truth has already scorched its way into the spotlight. And sometimes the biggest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people you'd take a bullet for. And now? Tiny has a choice to make. Will she rise from the ashes or burn with the bridge that betrayed her?